Unreal's metahumans have been the pinnacle of accessible photoreal digital humans for over half a decade now. You can use them in video games, VFX productions, and they're deeply integrated with Unreal's other tools. Not to mention, they're completely free. The problem is, I just don't really like Unreal Engine for virtual production. I know Unreal is like the industry standard for all this kind of stuff, but I just prefer Blender's tools and interface over Unreal for virtual production. And I'm pretty sure at least one other person agrees with me.
I agree.
See, he agrees. But I also really want to use the full extent of a metahuman in my Blender scenes. But unfortunately, a simple human like me does not know how to use the raw rig that Unreal provides. Not to mention hair being completely out of the question. So I set out on the long and hard journey of typing in the YouTube search bar to see if anyone has already done it. And I was right. I found a cool add-on called Character DNA add-on, which allows you to import the metahuman's DNA into Blender. But in my research, it's paid unless you want to do all the compiling yourself. And something I wouldn't use to describe my wallet is full. So you know what? It's time to make my own workflow. So I spent a few days racking my brain into thinking of ideas, and I think I finally found one that everybody can use. And sure, it may not be as good as using the metahuman's DNA, but it's pretty darn close. Well, step 1 obviously is to open an Unreal Engine project in 5.6 with the metahuman plugin installed. We're using 5.6 because at the time of recording, one of the add-ons we need, the latest version it's compatible with is 5.6. So once your project is open, just go into the plugins area and enable every plugin with the word metahuman in the name. But hold up, before you start your editor, let's do 2 more things. First, install the simple groom exporter, link in description. This add-on will allow us to export hair grooms as hair curve alembic files. So install the latest release and then extract the 7z file. Then open your file explorer and navigate to the root directory of your project, and create a new folder called plugins and put the extracted add-on in there. Next, go to my GitHub repo, link in description, and install everything. You'll find a folder called goodies, which will contain the UAsset file and etc. Drop that in your project's content folder. This is a level sequence that contains all the keyframes you need to bake the blend shapes in. Now you can finally restart your editor in peace. Now this isn't a metahuman making tutorial, so I'm just gonna speed through this part. This is Emily. Oh, and remember just one thing. Before you assemble your metahuman, make sure to take off all the clothes so the full body mesh can export. Actually, you know what, on second thought, I'd really love for my channel not to get banned so quickly. So I'm making a new metahuman character, and I'm naming him Jake instead. So once you've made your metahuman, it's time to drag the blueprint into the scene. Then open the Face AR Kit level sequence and pray that the keyframes are in there. If they are, great. Drag your metahuman's blueprint into the sequencer and delete the body layer. Then highlight and copy all the keyframes of the test metahuman's face layer and copy it into your own metahuman's face layer. And boom, you have a metahuman that's rigged to all 52 face blend shapes. But now, for Blender to see this animation, we gotta bake the sequence. So right click the face layer and click Bake Animation Sequence. Now that we have all the assets prepped, let's export them. For the meshes, export the baked animation sequence by doing what I do on screen and making sure these are the export options, and the body skeletal mesh at this path. For the textures, go to these file paths and export every texture that doesn't say LOD something at the end of it. Finally, for the hair, export all of the assets at this file path labeled groom. If your plugin worked correctly, you should be exporting them as an alembic file or a .abc file. And that should be it for Unreal Engine. You got everything you need to set up your metahuman in Blender. Now, open up your favorite version of Blender and import the 2 meshes into the scene. Now once you've imported these things, you'll see that your face mesh will be almost completely hidden by bones. So hide it for now and play back the sequence. And if you did everything right, you should see your face moving the exact same way it was in Unreal. So, the rest of this video is gonna get pretty technical, so nobody's judging if you rewind a little bit. It helps you learn and it helps me get more watch time, so let's get it. So duplicate your head mesh and rename it to tar. And then take the original mesh and rename that to ref. Then strip away all the shape keys and armature modifier, and clear the custom normals as well. Basically just make it into a regular old mesh. Next, go to the scripting tab or open up a new scripting window and copy over all the contents of the copy Shapekeys py file that I gave you in the goodies folder. Then make sure the tar mesh is the active object and run the script. Then there you have it. You should see a bunch of different shape keys on your head's mesh with a bunch of different labels. test them out and see if they work. Then delete the original head mesh, and on the new head, add a new armature modifier targeted to the original armature. Now that we're done, our MetaHuman's mesh is fully in Blender, but we still gotta do a few more things to make it complete. First, we gotta get rid of all of these random materials and useless meshes. Let's delete the material slots and the meshes that tie into them for everything except skin, mouth, eyes, eye shell, and lacriminal fluid. Let's also rename them to only face, mouth, eyes, and fluid for easier viewing. And for the body, just rename the only material to body. Most of these will have the exact same node setup except for the eyes and fluid, but they're both going to be simple. For the most part, they're all just basic PBR setups, but make sure that for every texture except for the base map is set to non-color. Make sure to set the normal map to DirectX, or flip the green channel for the proper normals. This last texture is a little different. It's called SRMF, and there are 4 textures packed into one image. To use all of these, we just need a separate color node and plug all the inputs into the proper places. Red is specular IOR, blue is roughness, and green is metallic. That's it for all the base materials, but we still have the fluid and eye materials. The fluid material is stupid easy. Just set a glass shader to 1.33 IOR and that's it. Now we have a MetaHuman Herobrine, which for some people is okay, but for most people I assume we want our MetaHumans to have eyes. But Unreal makes it so complicated. The sclera, or more commonly known as the white part of the eyes, and the irises are 2 different images, which is good for editing the iris size in MetaHuman Creator, but not really as good for Blender. So what we need to do is combine these 2 textures. Luckily for us though, it can be really easily done in the material node graph. Using a gradient texture set to spherical, and then offsetting its UV coordinates a little bit, we can get a perfect spherical mask. Using a color ramp to tune the transition point and plugging that into a mixed colors factor, then plugging the white parts texture to the top and the iris to the bottom, and the iris will be scaled way too high, so just copy these values on screen. Then do the exact same thing for the normal map, and bring your roughness down to 0, and you should have a really nice textured eye model. Now comes maybe the most taxing part of the process, hair. These hair strands can easily bump your MetaHuman from about 100k polys to well over 5 million. But you can always turn them off in the viewport, and Blender is surprisingly good at handling this amount of polygons. So first import all your hair alembics and make sure to scale them properly. You'll probably see a bunch of like these spider strands on your model, but cleaning them up is pretty simple. All you need to do is select endpoints, delete them, and your hair should be clean. Once the hair curves are put in their correct positions, convert them to meshes. So this process can be really heavy, so remember to save after every one you convert. Now, we need the facial hairs to deform with the shape keys, specifically the eyelashes, eyebrows, mustache, beard, and peach fuzz. So for each of these elements, you have to add a surface deform modifier and target them to the face. You may need to mess around with the values for especially the longer hair strands, but for the most part, it should work. Now to add thickness, we'll make a custom geometry nodes modifier and call it mesh to hair. Just add it to all the hair objects and just copy the geometry nodes things that I have on screen. You don't need to know how it works, just know that it does work. Set all the thicknesses to 0.000002. Set all the hairs to 0.000003. So for all the hair materials, use a principled hair BSDF. And mess around with the melanin concentration and redness to get what you want. And for the peach fuzz, I found the values on screen to look good. Finally, we're almost done with it now. We just need the rig to work. Now you could build a new rig with like Rigify or something, but I found that the rig that Unreal gives us has much nicer deformations. So to do that, we need to first combine the body and the face rig. First, let's prep the face rig. In edit mode, select the 3 bones that I'm showing on screen. These are the only ones that we actually really need. Also, delete any bones beneath these 3. Invert the selection, and then add all these bones to a new bone group called Hidden, and just hide it. So go back into object mode and join the face and body rig. Then in pose mode, you should see that the 3 bones in the face rig should overlap the exact same 3 bones in the body rig. All we need to do is add a copy transform constraint for the small ones, and then target it to the big ones. Once all 3 of them have the copy constraint, you can add them to a new bone group and hide them as well. The rig may not look as visually appealing, but it has everything, the tweaks and the base bones that you need in a good rig. And there you got it. You got a fully rigged freaking MetaHuman in Blender. And for the few of you who stuck around, I got a few quality of life tips. You can join the face mesh and the body mesh just so there are no subsurface scattering issues along the seams. Though remember to rebind the hair strands after you join them. If you're working on animation in the material preview, you can set the fluid material to be a transparent BSDF shader so you can see where the eyes are looking. If you want to clothe your metahuman, the best way I've done it is to first get your cloth and sculpt it to your body, then use a surface deform modifier to bind the clothes to the body. I find it makes a much better result than just using automatic weights. And if you don't want that, you can use this free program called MetaTailor. I'm sure you can find some tutorials online. Well, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe to see more from me. Also, I got 2 more projects involving metahumans coming up, so watch out for them. And if you have any other questions, drop them down in the comments below and I'll see if I can answer any of them. So other than that, I guess I'll see you next time.